Hey everyone. So after looking at the recording that I made from Monday's class, where I just sort of was going through all of the Premiere Pro points, setting up the root folder and so on, I realized this thing's like almost 2 hours long because I was answering questions and telling stories and whatnot that I felt like, okay, I'm going to need to edit this down. And it seems much more straightforward to go ahead and simply re-record the presentation so that that it's more clear and that it gets to the point without you having to sift through 2 hours of footage there. So I'm going to go ahead and do the presentation and kind of go through the keynote presentation that we were working on. Go ahead and share screen here. And here we are. We're on Adobe Premiere Pro, and Premiere Pro is Adobe's professional video editing software. And the nature of digital video today is a non-linear editing structure. And what that means is that you're capable of editing and re-editing and tweaking things throughout the entire process. In the old days, if you were working with like acetate film, film strips, you would have been, limited to what you could do in terms of going back. So if you had already made cuts and you had seamed them together and so on, and then later on decided you needed to make a change earlier on, it was much more complicated than it is today. With digital technology, though, there is a structure. There's a framework that we have to follow. And that framework begins with something that we call the root folder. And the root folder is at the heart of every project that you do. So every project that you create, whether it's video or not, it's a good idea to create your root folder. This is good for structure and good for organization, but it's also, almost absolutely, not almost, it is absolutely necessary for when you're working collaboratively. This way the team knows where to go to find all the materials and so on. So what goes into this root folder? You create your root folder. The project name _root is how I identify it. And so what you put in there is going to be things like your research, your team contacts, whoever it is, a text edit with everybody's contact information, things like storyboards, video clips, sound clips, anything that is basically project related goes into that folder. And you keep adding to it. Of course, you'll start off doing your research for a project and you'll have stuff in there and then you'll continue to add to it. So as you continue to kind of work on that, your root folder becomes the sort of home for all of it. And so this is what a root folder would look like if you were, looking inside of it. You click on it, open it up, and you would have these kinds of things in there. You would have, your videos, you would have a folder with storyboards in there and your contact list and so on. You can also see that I have here something called a subclip and then another subclip. I talked a bit about that in class about how those subclips work, and normally I would jump to a making subclips with QuickTime video, but I'll make that a separate sort of thing for you guys to jump in on later. We'll also be able to make what are called subclips. In other words, take a larger piece of video and then trim it down or pull out the important parts of it. We could do that in Premiere. I tend to like to do it outside of Premiere because it just gives me a time to sort of look through all my footage before I begin in my head the editing process. I sort of get to know the footage that I've already shot. So with that, once you have your root folder set up, you got all your videos in there, that's when you start to open Premiere Pro. That's when you actually open the editing software. You don't just open the editing software, drag a bunch of videos into it and start editing. Unlike some other, I would say, either consumer or even prosumer software, where you would literally just open it up and it says, what do you want to do with my video, right? And so you create the thing and it actually says my video. No, Premiere Pro and most all other professional software give you all of the options. It's not going to necessarily dictate to you what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. It is a tool, and so just like a hammer isn't going to all by itself drive a nail. You're the one who has to pick up the hammer, decide where the nail's going to go, put it in there, and then give it a whack. All right, so you've opened up Premiere, and now what you're looking at is a new project window. And so a new project window is going to then, when you click on that, is going to give you this sort of dialog box. Okay, and this dialog box is kind of complicated to look at. There's a lot of stuff there, but there's really only a couple of places that you're looking at. In fact, there's only one place that you're going to be looking at, and what you're identifying is where's the root folder. So where do you go to do that? So I have this little pointer. I don't know if you're able to see it. I hope you are. So you're looking at this, and you can see the pointer right up there where it says Viola Premiere Root Folder. You want to browse, okay? So you click on Browse, and what you're doing now is navigating to the desktop or wherever your root folder happens to be. You select it, making sure that that's what it is, and then you hit Choose. So what you're doing is you're just telling Premiere Pro where the root folder is. Then you'll hit OK, and you're ready to go to the next step. So with all of that stuff in that window, it looks complicated, but you're really only looking at that first point up at the top where it says location, and you're going to identify where the root folder is that you've made that has all your stuff in it. You could also name it at that point. Don't mistake naming for saving, because just naming it, you've given it a name, you haven't officially saved it yet. All right, so now that it's open, you have effectively a workspace, okay? And this workspace is, again, looks sort of like complex, or at least when it's blank, it's hard to really figure out what am I looking at, right? But the default workspace, which is under the learning sort of workspace construction, is really 4 quadrants. Now, these 4 quadrants, you don't necessarily want to move them around until you are really comfortable with the interface. After that, you can start to customize the positioning of these windows to your own setup. For instance, I use a dual monitors, and so I might set my screens up, these 4 squares up, a little bit differently than I would if I was just on my laptop or something like that. So for you guys, I want everybody to be working in this learning workspace so that you can learn. Also, so that when I'm coming to help you, I'll know what I'm looking at as well. I'll know where to go. So what are we actually looking at in these 4 areas? The first window down here, it's called Assets, and this is where all the stuff that's inside of your root folder would eventually go. So all your video clips and your audio clips and stuff like that will wind up in the Assets folder. You'll import them and they'll be living there. Now, you're not actually importing the file itself, you're just sort of pointing an arrow at it. So when you're editing in Premiere Pro, you're not actually messing around with the video itself. You are simply offering up a set of instructions for later for Premiere Pro to create a video for you. So you don't have to worry about the idea that if I edit this video inside of Premiere Pro, that it's going to somehow mess up the original video. It never does. The next window here is the timeline. And the timeline is where sequences go. And this is actually where all the editing happens. This is where you have a clip, and then another clip, and then another clip, and you'll be moving them around, and you'll be scrolling them back and forth and kind of seaming them together. This is actually where the sort of visual of how the piece is coming together will look. We create sequences to put those videos in, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. Next, up here in this larger window is the clip editing canvas. And the clip editing canvas, this is where you do things like add effects, maybe do some custom transitions to the videos and things like this. This is where you'll bring one of those clips up and then you will apply a video effect to it. Maybe you'll slow down the video, or maybe you'll make it transparent so you can sort of see through it, and then you can have two videos. You can sort of see through both of them, and you're seeing them both at the same time. This is where you'll do a lot of that kind of stuff. Finally, the fourth window here is the program review. So in other words, the video that you're editing in that sequence down below, that is, you're going to see the sort of picture evidence of it in the window that I got the arrow on right now. That's going to be where you get a preview of what the audience would see if you were to export your project right now and you'd look at it. So that would be the program preview. So as you're scrolling through your timeline, you're going to see that program preview change because it's giving you a preview of what the audience would actually see. Now, these workspaces, as I mentioned, these are constructs of how these windows look in front of you. There are different ones that you can choose from. There's assembly and audio and color and effects and so on. And as you learn Premiere Pro a little bit more, as you jump into different screen scenarios where you might have one screen, two screens, even three screens that you're using, you might decide to use a different organization of these windows, but I really wouldn't want you to do that until you learn how to use them first. And if they're organized in this very sort of four-square situation, it'll be much easier for you to use. Premiere Pro designers know that, and that's why they've constructed the one that's called Learning. Why did I do air quotes? That's silly. The one that's called Learning, because it's not learning, it's learning. You're learning. That's why they put them in this four-square, because it's the most approachable kind of organization of them. So if you happen to be working and it gets all out of whack, right? You move a window or something like that and it's not where you want it to be, you can go to Window, go to Workspaces, which pulls down that panel, and go to Learning, and it'll kind of reorganize them back to where you're comfortable with. Because every once in a while you can accidentally get them out of place. Now, you're back into the assets. You're ready to now bring video into the program, right? You're ready to start your video editing and all of that kind of stuff. So down here, you got assets. Now, how do you bring the video in? What you're going to do is go up to File at the top of the window and scroll down to Import, File, Import. You can also hit the handy Command-I keys, and that'll automatically bring up that window. From there, when you click on Import, it's going to bring up specific windows, okay? And the window should be your root folder, the folder that has all your video stuff in it. Why is it going to pick that one? Because you've already assigned it. You've assigned, remember back when we started the project, we said, our root folder goes here. That was the whole point of doing that, is it's automatically going to know exactly where it is. So here I have the sub clip. I can select that. I can also come over here and I can select this other clip, and then I would hit OK. And when I do that, it would wind up right there in the program. And so once they're there, then I would want to put them into the timeline. Okay, and when I do a timeline, before I put them on the timeline, I will need to create what's called a sequence. Because right now, as you can see, it reads no sequence, which means there's no line for me to drop the video on. So I'll have to do that next, is to create a sequence. And that's where I'll leave off right now, is the point at which we'll create the sequence, because in class I want to help you to do that and then go through further instruction on how to organize those things. So I'll end this portion of the video. I may create another video again that has us doing the editing on the timeline and creating sequences and all of that stuff, but I think that's enough for now. That should get you started sort of setting up your project and getting it organized, and then we'll continue forward with our editing. All right, so that will be the end of this part. It's certainly less long than the 2 hours that it took to have for the video on Monday. And this is for review anyway. You can certainly send me messages and ask questions, and I am here to help. So we will see you later on, and hope you are everybody doing well. All right, take care, everybody. Bye bye now.